As a kid, I loved the outdoors and spent most of my free time climbing trees and playing in the hills of Nogales. My mother was probably the most influential person in nurturing my curiosity and ideas. At 4, when I jumped out of a tree trying to fly like Superman, instead of forbidding my imaginary exploits, she made a towel into a Superman cape, hoping it would satisfy my desire to play the hero's role. But I still could not fly. At 7, I wanted to paint my white dog pink. She suggested we bathe him in food coloring, and I got a pink dog just like I wanted. At 10, I came home with a fish from a puddle in the arroyo, and Mom set up a glass bottle so I could watch him develop legs and become a frog. It had been a tadpole, not a fish. But Mom had shown me, not told me, and this is the way I learned many lessons. Certainly these experiences must have impelled my inquisitive mind toward science. My mother fostered my natural curiosity and never once made me feel as though my ideas were silly or unimportant. Now, although my mother and family were extremely supportive, they did not condone all of my experiments. On one Halloween, I arrived at the idea that by surprising as many senses as possible at a single moment, I could find someone to the nth degree. So I decided to test my idea on my unsuspecting sister Bertha, who was closest to my age and who was also my closest playmate. As she entered our bedroom, I turned the light switch off, threw a stinky rag at her, and yelled, thus covering 4 senses. My experiment was a great success. Bertha cried out, nearly fainted, and was traumatized for a long while. My mother was outraged, but worst of all, I felt terrible and worried that my sister would never stop crying or shaking. Now, early in my college years, I took a course in the history of science, where we were introduced to the age-old philosophical argument of the responsibility of the scientist for his or her actions and inventions. I thought back on this incident as my first experience on this concept. Now I'll skip over to more of my academic or my school years. As I reminisce about my school years, I cannot recall some anguished moments. For example, in elementary school, the teachers held competitions that were similar to spelling bees, but covered several subjects. By lining up members of each classroom along the walls, classrooms would compete against each other, questions pertaining to the various class subjects, history, geography, and of course spelling, would be asked of each class member in turn. If the student gave the wrong answer, she or he would sit down and the questioning would continue until all the members of one classroom were seated. The classroom that had at least one student standing won. I believe the students were tracked at the time because it was obvious that the smarter kids, or the kids with the answers, were in class A and the others were in class B. The students in class A were mostly Anglo, English speaking, and wealthier. In contrast, the students in class B were usually Chicano children who spoke English as a second language and to be in a poorer economic class. Now, during class competitions, most of the students in Class B would soon be seated, unable to answer the questions correctly. Although I was a Chicana student in Class B, I studied the questions and would often be one of the last left standing from my class after a couple of rounds. Sometimes I would be the sole student answering questions against 15 or so other students from Class A. While I was standing alone, I felt my classmates cheering me on, hoping I would win. Of course, my victory, my victory was their victory too. Even though I enjoyed the victories, I was deeply aware of the embarrassment my classmates felt when they did not know the right answer. When I went for our classroom, it was as if all of us were vindicated because I was one of them. And I'll skip on more into my college years, or my high school here. I gained advanced math preparation, well, not start. The science laboratories in my small town's only high school were very limited, and I was not prepared for the advanced college science classes required of chemistry and zoology majors. We did not even have calculus courses in my high school. But fortunately, my rudimentary preparation was solid. I gained advanced math preparation from my high school algebra professor, Mr. Summers, who made himself available after school to work with me on special projects. One day, after passing out the algebra exam results to the class, he did not return my paper and instead asked me to see him after school. I was terrified. I wondered what had gone wrong with the exam. Could I have failed? No. He simply wanted to congratulate me on my work and offered to help me after school with extra math projects, since more advanced classes were not available in that school. Thus, he too became a guardian angel, eliminating unseen obstacles in my path. Mr. Summers, a nondescript man as far as I was concerned, made a special effort and gave me his time so that I could learn and enjoy math outside the classroom. He helped me prepare for the higher mathematics expected of college students. However, not even the special attention from Mr. Summers prepared me for the demanding science courses in college. I felt no matter how hard I tried, I could not make the straight A's I was used to in high school. Now I realize how fortunate I was to maintain a respectable grade point average given the gaps in my earlier education. So finally, in my third year of college, I transferred to the University of Arizona without losing a single credit hour from my junior college courses. By this point, I felt I was finally on par with my fellow students. I realized that the education I had gotten at the junior college in the previous 2 years made it possible for me to comprehend the lectures and understand the material I had to study to ace organic chemistry class. I would receive 140 points, including extra points in the exams when the class average was 30 to 40 points. I enjoyed organic chemistry. For me, working with organic reactions and recombining carbon chains was like doing puzzles. My grades placed me at the top of the class. I was the same person putting in the same amount of effort, but now I had excellent grades as well. I felt euphoric. I mention this to emphasize the importance of acquiring the foundation to tackle the classes that appear difficult due to the lack of solid background in the subject. I have many Chicana friends who tell me that they would have studied chemistry, math, or physics if the courses had not been so hard. I know that many of these people are smart and the principles of science are not impossible to learn if a task is taken a step at a time. Scientific principles are so much easier to learn with a sound fundamental base. I have learned you can climb to the top of the ladder only by stepping on the bottom rungs first, one at a time. A strong foundation in mathematics is essential for students wishing to pursue college degrees in science and engineering. That's from my personal experience. 5 minutes. Now, in selecting the excerpts for my presentation today, there are 3 key points that emerged as essential for success in my pursuit of a career in science. One was the importance of supportive family, the presence of teachers and mentors who are strong advocates, and a solid academic background necessary to succeed in college science and math courses. If we are to increase the number of Chicanas in the STEM fields, we must address these issues as I've learned through my own experience. Thank you.